This class is concerned with the delegation of authority. Now, an effective leader is one who can efficiently manage his or her group of employees. By that is meant he or she is able to achieve the targets or the goals that are set within the department or set by the organization, and is able to motivate the employees and guide the employees to meet the targets by the set date that's required. But an effective leader can also effectively delegate authority. So here she is able to look at the employees and identify particular employees who are extra diligent, who have good application to their work, have high skill sets, are dedicated to doing a good job. And in identifying those workers, the manager is able to then delegate or give responsibility to those workers to complete certain tasks. Now this lightens the workload for the manager, because certain subtasks of the main activity will then be taken over by some of the employees who will manage the delivery of that particular section or that particular part. So delegation is, generally speaking, a good thing. It breaks up the work, and it also, as we'll see later in the slides, it motivates the workforce. It's to be welcomed. So an effective leader is one who can efficiently manage his or her group of employees, can also delegate the authority, identify, as I said, members of the group to receive the authority, and therefore can manage several groups, of course, who have been delegated to work on specific subtasks. So the manager, instead of looking at the overall project, now just looks at the subgroups that are working on specific parts of it. And the last point is that the effective leader, the effective manager, can efficiently communicate authority to the workers, to the subordinates who have taken on these activities. So there's good communications, clear communications, good understanding of what's required, and a feeling of effective teamwork within the group. So what is delegation? Well, delegation of authority is the process of dividing, or subdividing I should say, work and allocating it to individual group members. So it's the process of subdividing a larger task into smaller tasks and then delegating, giving authority to selected workers to complete those individual tasks. In large departments, managers can't be expected to organize and control all the workload in the department. The manager may have official foremen or charge hands who are working under the manager, but even then large departments may require that some workers take authority for certain aspects of the job, and they will be delegated. The authority will be delegated to them to complete those tasks. So it's particularly important to be able to delegate when we have large projects. For example, constructing a large passenger airline. When Eurobus made its latest airline, the wings were made in one country, and the fuselage was made in a different country, and the engines were made someplace else, and it was assembled. It was assembled and put together, but within those large tasks there will be more delegation, more breaking down the work, until finally individual workers will be delegated to do particular tasks. So we can start to see delegation as it's like a hierarchy. It cascades through the organization. The senior management delegate authority to the middle management to do certain tasks, to undertake certain tasks, to meet certain orders from customers and to organize production in a certain way. And the middle management delegate to the departmental managers to undertake certain tasks, and the middle managers delegate to responsible individuals within their department that they have isolated and considered and looked at in the context of delegation, that they have selected who would be appropriate for delegation. So we can see delegation as a type of cascading of authority through the organization. Delegating authority gives selected workers confidence and an opportunity to promote their careers. It shows trust in their ability and reliability. So the workers who have been selected, they have the honour almost of completing these tasks. They can see their career moving in the right direction. They've been identified as good workers. They've been identified as reliable, as diligent, as people who will apply themselves to meet the deadlines and supply good quality work. So it's a good reflection on them. It gives them more confidence in their career, in their security of employment. It's generally something that's welcomed by the selected workers. Now, the objectives of delegation. It shares out the workload in order to meet deadlines. So it breaks down the overall task into subtasks so that deadlines can be met, and individual parts of the overall work can be worked on simultaneously, and the manager can see where there are issues and where there are problems, and bring resources and extra personnel perhaps to bear on those areas to ensure that the overall deadline will be met. It widens worker experiences and promotes opportunities for career development. Well, as I said earlier, being selected as the worker who's going to receive this extra authority is an honour. It's a privilege almost. It certainly indicates to the worker that they are doing the work properly and they are being recognised and almost rewarded for this by being given this extra opportunity to show their capacity to work in this environment. So workers see their careers moving in the right direction. They feel a sense of pride in what they're doing, and the fact that they've been selected to receive this extra responsibility. It develops the experiences of the managers in handling tasks and promotes their confidence in delegating authority as well. Sometimes managers are reluctant to delegate. They simply don't trust that the work will be done, or it'll be done to a good quality. So when the managers do it for the first few times, they may worry that the job is not going to be completed satisfactorily, and this will reflect on them. But once they've had the experience of delegating and they've worked in a situation where there is delegation, they will build up their confidence and they will see the issues and they will know how to control the situation. So it's a learning experience for the managers as well. Overall, it promotes efficiency and motivation within the organization. So overall, the organization benefits because now more people have interest in the work, more people are applying themselves, more people are motivated, and as I said earlier, the the responsibility, the overall responsibility in the organization has cascaded downwards. It's moved downwards from the senior management to the middle management, to the departmental managers, to the foremen and so on, and down to the workers who have been identified as making a contribution and has been recognized for doing so by being given this extra responsibility. Now let's talk about authority for a second, because delegation is passing authority on to someone. This is the right of the leader. It's the leader who's got the authority to pass it on. So it's the person in power who takes the decision to pass on some of his or her authority to someone else. They still may have responsibility, and we'll talk about that in the slides to come. But for the moment, it's only the person who has the authority can pass it on, and that is the leader or the manager. The manager or the leader has the right to give orders to subordinate workers in order to achieve specific tasks. So the manager has the authority to ask the workers to complete the tasks by a certain time and in a certain manner. That's, if you like, the prerogative of the manager. And he or she also has the right to expect his or her orders to be completed on time, by a certain time. When customers place orders, they want them delivered within a reasonable time or within some specified time. And it's the job of the managers to ensure that the work is completed by that time and that the contract is therefore honoured. So the manager, in passing on authority, can expect that his or her orders will be followed and also that the work will be delivered according to the time schedule required. Of course, the people in authority must not abuse their power. They must only ask what is reasonable, what is achievable. They must only ask that. They can't ask for more than that. And their requirements must be tempered according to that. So it would be wrong to expect a worker to be under severe strain and stress as a consequence of the delegation. The worker should be able to work at a normal rate within his or her capacity, but be responsible for the task, but not be put under undue pressure. Obviously, the highest level of authority comes from the top management, and as I said earlier, it cascades down the hierarchy. The top management delegate to the middle management to give them some authority to undertake certain tasks. The middle management passes on some of that authority to the departmental managers, asking them to complete certain tasks. The managers pass it on to whatever layer is under them. It could be another layer of management, or it could be on to foremen or charge hands or special individuals who are at the bottom layer of the management hierarchy, and they're being asked to undertake certain tasks, and they in turn may recognize some workers as having special capacity and application and reliability, and may delegate some work to those workers as well. So it's a cascading process coming from the top all the way down. Now, responsibility, well, a person's obligation to complete a task. This is what responsibility is. It's a person's obligation to complete a task. Responsibility and obligation are similar. So responsibility is the person's obligation to complete a task. They're responsible to complete the task. The person has to ensure that the task is completed on time. Not just completed on time, but is of the quality that's expected. So there is a responsibility passed on that way. Workers have a responsibility to be diligent and honest and efficient. Line and middle management have a responsibility to be efficient and meet work requirements. And senior management have a responsibility to ensure the survival and growth of the business. So there are different responsibilities right throughout the organization. Now, accountability, well, this arises out of responsibility. When someone is responsible for a particular task, they're held accountable. If they were responsible for performing a certain task and it was not performed adequately, it wasn't performed on time, or it was poor quality, they need to account for why that happened. So there is accountability associated with responsibility. It's the end result of performance against expectations. Accountability is the bridge between performance and expectations. Management may have certain expectations about a particular task in terms of its delivery date and the quality of the work. So they have expectations. The performance was, it was 2 days late and there were some issues surrounding the quality. Now someone needs to account for those. If it was the case that the work was delivered on time and of good quality, then there is no need for accountability. There's nothing to account for. It met expectations. So accountability comes into play when expectations are not fulfilled. It indicates who is responsible for the completion of the task. Who was responsible, and also why did it happen? Example, if top management passes a task to middle management is responsible for the completion of the task. However, the top management is responsible if the job is not completed satisfactorily. It was the top management who delegated the task to the middle management, but they're still responsible. So they are the ones who are accountable. Middle management have a responsibility to complete the task, but it's the top management who are accountable for the delivery of the task because it was them who passed it on in the first place. Now the stages in achieving delegation. The following stages must be present in order to achieve delegation. Stage 1. Subdivide tasks and duties to subordinates. So the stage 1 is break up the main task into smaller sections and delegate. Recognize who it's going to be delegated to in terms of their reliability, their skills, their interests, and so on. So recognize who it's going to be delegated to and break up the main task. Then make sure that the person who's passing the authority has got the authority to do so. Make sure that the person who is asking the workers to complete certain tasks by a certain time, that they have got the authority themselves to do that. It's the creation of responsibility and accountability. As I said earlier, it's measuring expectations against performance, and it's accounting for any mismatch in the two. If performance was less than that expected, it needs to be accounted for. And who is responsible? So it's itemizing. The whole process of delegation is itemizing who is responsible, and who's accountable. So if we look at it in terms of the organization, we'd start with the Chief Executive Officer or the Managing Director, or whatever you want to call him or her. Then it's passed on stage 2 to the manager. So there's been, if you like, delegation to the manager. And then the manager delegates to staff, junior staff under him or her, to the foreman, foreman 1, foreman 2, or to office staff or to whoever. So we've got the 3 stages in delegation. So the 3 stages indicate that who is responsible and who has the authority to pass on the instructions to the next level. Let's talk about each of these for a few moments in the following slides. Let's look at stage 1. Stage 1, you recognize, is the CEO stage. Now, what duties have to be delegated to subordinates? So at stage 1, the CEO must decide what duties have to be delegated. The CEO can't do everything him or herself, so some responsibilities must be delegated. Now, the people receiving that work should be consulted. The managers receiving it, the subordinates receiving it, should be consulted on what is expected from their task. They can't just be given vague instructions and be expected to complete precisely what was required. They should be given instructions and be briefed about what is required. Otherwise, as I said, there will be the chances of a mismatch between expectations and performance. The CEO may have an expectation of a certain outcome, but if the managers are not properly briefed, the performance may be different. So the duty should be translated either as a list of functions, targets to be achieved, or formal meetings. It could be, depending on the nature of the delegation, if it's looking at corporate planning, for example, a set of formal meetings should be organized and individual managers expected to do some research for each of the meetings, and the responsibility for undertaking the research is delegated. Or it could be that it's a big task on the shop floor. Let's say it's an engineering task, and certain functions that will be needed should be identified, and ensuring that the resources are there to meet this, and the staff are trained, and the targets are clearly identified. Now, stage 2. The stage 2 was at the manager stage. So let's talk about stage 2. Authority is now entrusted to subordinates. So now the manager has got the authority. It's come from the CEO. And the authority is delegated to perform the task satisfactorily. So the subordinate has been identified, has been entrusted with this particular task, and the authority is now being passed to that person to complete the task. Now, the subordinates must have their independence to carry out the task and complete it. If the CEO, in this case, constantly intervenes and monitors and checks and overrules the manager, then it's not proper delegation. Delegation means passing the task along and trusting the manager to complete it by the date that was set. if the superior, in this case the CEO, constantly intervenes and objects and changes what the manager is doing, then that is not delegation. The delegation has been overruled. But the subordinates should be given the opportunity to accept or reject the task. And if they accept it, it creates responsibilities and accountability. But they should be able to reject it as well. Ideally, in an ideal world, I should say, the managers should only really accept tasks that they know that they can complete. They can complete within the time frame and also to the quality required. If they accept tasks that don't meet those conditions, the chances are they're not going to have a satisfactory outcome, and it's going to reflect badly on them. The final stage was the foreman and the junior members of staff. The subordinates are obliged to perform their duties satisfactorily within the time limits given. So once the work is broken up and authority has been delegated, the individual members of staff should work to the deadlines that are set. And the deadlines should be realistic. They should be fair and they should be achievable. The subordinates should report to his or her superior on progress and performance of the task. There should be constant reporting to ensure that issues, problems, can be addressed in a timely manner to make sure that the overall deadline does not slip. So there should be meetings or small, perhaps even informal meetings between the person carrying out the tasks and the superior, the person who delegated the task in the first place, to ensure that progress has been made and the work is moving along. The delegator is responsible for aiding the subordinate in the task involved. There should be a support mechanism. The person receiving the task that's been delegated should not feel isolated and, in the event of an issue arising, a problem arising, feeling confused and, as I said, isolated. They need support. So it should come with a package of support. The delegator is accountable if the task is not completed. It's the person who delegates who is accountable, because they should have monitored the situation without intervening too much, but they should have monitored, have regular meetings to ensure that the work was progressing, and if it didn't, they should be able to account for what had happened. They're the ones who delegated. They're the ones who are accountable. Now, the advantages of delegation, well, it makes the workload easier to manage. The workload is broken down into small sections, so it's easier to deal with. There's increased coordination and communication within the group, which in itself is a good thing. There's better channels of communication. People speak to each other more frequently, and there's more collaboration within the working environment, perhaps the formation of teams and better overall working conditions. It develops a sense of trust amongst group members or subordinates. The people receiving the task feel trusted, and they feel quite honoured to be respected in this way. There may be an issue about people who haven't been selected. There may be some jealousy or some problems in that area. These would have to be overcome by other means. There should be some sort of palliative to them to try and make them feel better about one member of staff being asked to have responsibility and overlooking them. That should be explained, and the reasons why it should be explained, and the onus is on the manager who is delegating to ensure that there's no ill will as a consequence of the delegation. But generally speaking, it promotes a sense of trust, and it, generally speaking, leads to greater motivation within the workplace. It provides career development and opportunities for the employees. If they do a good job and deliver the work on time and it's very good quality, that may stand them in good stead in the future for any promotion that comes up within the organisation. They may be seen as reliable, and it'll help their career prospects. It develops skills and experience, not just the skills of doing the task, but the skills of managing the delegation itself. And it gives the manager and the person receiving the responsibility the experience of this. So there are benefits in the case of future delegation, because any problems or issues that were dealt with and come up and dealt with, that experience has been acquired, and in future similar issues can be dealt with efficiently. There's an increase in productivity because there's more learning by doing. It's the division of labour. The work has been broken up into smaller tasks, and individual members of the workforce have responsibility for particular tasks. They will acquire skills in performing those tasks, and productivity will be increased as a consequence. So it should save time and money, and it should lead to more output. It should promote team working and communication, especially between superiors and subordinates. So there should be more collaboration in the workforce, and that's again a long-run advantage to the business, because the teams work better together. There's better communications, there's greater understanding between them. Now, the disadvantages of delegation: well, the employees may reject the responsibility. Sometimes it happens. Workers don't want responsibility. They want to go to work and perform a particular task and go home. They don't want extra responsibility. They don't want the worry of extra responsibility, just in case something went wrong. It could be the employees lack certain skills and knowledge to take on the responsibility. So the people who are selected have to be selected carefully for suitability for delegation. Not everybody's suitable. Some people may not have the skills or the knowledge or even the temperament to take it on. So maybe issues. There's always the issue that sometimes the managers want to do it themselves. They don't trust anybody. They don't trust their workers. They don't trust their junior management. They want to do it themselves to make sure it's done. They don't want a failure to be on their books, on their name. So they want to do it themselves. It's not delegation. It's just doing everything themselves. Not a good tactic, because depends on the size of the organization, depends on the complexity of the tasks, and it could even be injurious to the person's health to try and take on too much. So not a good idea. If the tasks are not completed to expected standards, then there may be delays. So quality should be checked right throughout the process. When the work is delegated, it doesn't mean that the organization doesn't have responsibility for the work. They do, and it's their responsibility to ensure that the quality of the work is good, so that the customer has a good experience of the product in the end. So issues, technical issues in the production of the product needs to be monitored, and the quality of the product should be checked right throughout to, again, stop delays and to ensure that both the people working on the project, the people who have received the delegation and who are working on it, they have good experience, and also the customer at the other extreme has got a good experience of the product. So it's a question of ensuring that it's monitored throughout, monitored effectively, and in accordance with the idea of delegation, that the monitoring is not too interventionist, it's not too frequent. It gives the person working on the task the freedom to do the task in the way that best suits them. But at the same time, deadlines are met and quality is maintained. Delegation is a topic that is so prevalent in industry. It happens virtually all the time. Most industries have got this type of cascading types of responsibility throughout the organization. What this session has done is try to highlight some of the main issues associated with that. But that's all I'm going to do in this session. I want to leave it at that and say thank you for watching.